let me get back a bit. So first question is in stakeholder analysis, why do we do that? Then there are what are the tools? So as far as why we do that is uh, these are some of the questions the program manager wants to get answered. For example, are they going to be helpful or are they going to be hampering the work? Like, we are talking about stakeholders. The stakeholders we want to identify, or we identified already. We analyze them if they are going to be helpful for the project or program or not. And who are our allies who are oblivious to the project, who don't know much about the project, and who are the adversaries. Then we want to find out what is the current level of engagement of stakeholders. Where should the stakeholder be? So how much do you want each stakeholder to be engaged? Then our interest especially is in what is the level of interest, power, or influence these stakeholders exercise on the project. Then we also want to know which stakeholders gets involved at what stage. This is important, as we discussed earlier, that stakeholders are not going to be same all the time, and they do not exercise the same influence throughout the life of the program. So they keep changing. So at what stage which stakeholder is going to get involved, and then what is the purpose of this stakeholder? How do you really get into communication with the stakeholder? Do you need to consult with him or inform or approve? He may be having the authorization, he approves something, or maybe he has to perform certain activities. Who needs to know about the changes? That is about reporting. What information is to be communicated to what stakeholders? So these are the basic, reasons why we want to analyze the stakeholders. Naturally, this is just a kind of a revision, but according to PMBOK, we had 4 models. Here, there is a 5th model, which is shown as number 4 here, which we did not discuss. Anyways, first 4 models shown here are all 2-dimensional models. We have talked about the power versus interest grid, and similar to power versus interest grid, very similar to that, only the parameters changes. We have the influence and impact, we have the power and influence, and then there is yet another which I found from another source, that is importance and influence. So whether you want to say that power and importance are being interchanged, or you want to maybe give it a different meaning, then probably these are the 4 different 2-dimensional models. As far as the salience model is concerned, that is our interest right now. We wanted to know more about salience model and how does it work, and I did find some good information about it. Anyways, first starting with the 2-dimensional models, as I said, we have power versus interest, which we studied a lot, influence, impact. Naturally, if you understand the power interest grid, you can match it up with any one of these different models. First 2 models, power versus interest and influences versus impact, both are very similar, because power can be associated with the influence and interest can be associated with the impact. So it's kind of very similar. Power is like influence and interest is like what the impact they are causing. So both of these have on the x-axis, or you can say, sorry, on the y-axis we have the power or influence, and on the x-axis we have interest or impact. Just like this, power or influence on the y-axis and interest or impact on the x-axis. If you specifically want to look at it from the specific power interest grid, let us see this. This is, not to confuse yourself, this is the power interest grid. And on a power interest grid, what I have done is that we have just 4 quadrants, and these are various stakeholders which have been placed on either one of these quadrants. Quadrant 1 is the one with the highest power and low interest. So naturally, we just have to keep them satisfied, exactly as we studied earlier. Quadrant 2 is people with high power and high interest, so manage them closely. Quadrant 3, we keep them informed. Quadrant 4, we keep an eye on them. So that's why I have given them different colors. Exactly the same formula can be applied to influence and impact also. There is no problem. High influence and low impact, we have to keep them satisfied. High influence and high impact, naturally, these are most important. That's why they are shown in the highest priority red color. They are to be managed closely. Low influence and high impact, same as generally our customer. He may not influence our decisions, but he is impacted the most. So keep them informed, and those who are low in influence and low in impact, you just have to monitor them, keep an eye on them, watch them. Then we have the power influence grid and the importance influence grid. I would again like to show them like this. Power and importance comes on the y-axis, and influence, in both cases we have influence, so influence comes on the y-axis. Exactly the same story. If you look at it from power and influence point of view, again the same 4 quadrants and the same 4 strategies work here. And if you look at it from importance influence point of view, even then the story remains the same. So though I have shown you 4 two-dimensional models, whereas in PMBOK there were 3, that doesn't make much of a difference because all these 4 are similarly interpreted, right? And they just have 4 quadrants each. They just have 2 variables, importance and influence or whatever, power and interest. So we have two variables, and we measure the stakeholders according to that. No matter how are you measuring, you are measuring it on a Likert scale from 1 to 10, from 1 to 5, from 1 to 100 or 200, whatever. That does not matter. They will be somehow placed in one of these quadrants. So this was easier. This was easier. Let us now move on to the salience model. So before I can move on, any questions so far?
I have a question. Can you go back one slide, please?
Here it is.
Yeah, on this slide, do you, for example, if you're managing many stakeholders, are we putting them? Can we put them into groups and then define the actual names on another list? For example, A would be a group of 3 people.
Right.
B would be,
yes.
Yeah.
Basically, when we say a stakeholder, that does not mean a individual. That could be an individual, that could be a group, that could be an organization. That is number 1. Secondly, if we go by this definition, then still we can have certain classifications of the stakeholders, like we used to say internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and things like that. So that is a classification from a different point of view. Here what we are doing is, whether they are internal or external stakeholders, we all are trying to place them on one of these quadrants, irrespective of the whatever classification group they related to. But here we have put them in one of these quadrants. Now their new grouping has emerged, and that grouping, we have got 4 groups now. One group which we have to manage very closely, one group we have to keep them satisfied, and this is the new grouping according to which we are going to develop a strategy to deal with that specific group of stakeholders. So we are talking about groups here. So manage closely is generally for L, I, H, and C. All 4 stakeholders will be managed closely. But naturally, we will develop further deeper strategy for L and H and I and C. But generally speaking, this group has to be managed closely. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, wonderful. Anything from you for that?
No, that's good.
Okay, now comes the three-dimensional model. Now the interesting part is in salience model. Um, what I taught you was that there is a three-dimensional model and there could be more than three variables. I was unable to find any model existing with more than three variables. And I found out that three-dimensional model with three variables is actually the salience model, right? So this is something which is different from what I described to you before. I said three or more. Still, I know I believe that, but still, the examples I've got from various sources, the salience model has always three dimensions, three variables, and not only that, but these three variables are also fixed. They are power, legitimacy, and urgency. So these are the three variables or three dimensions of the salience model. That means we have now gone into a third dimension. Now, how to depict the third dimension? This is very interesting. When we try to depict the third dimension, we come up with many interesting, groupings. It is not only the four groups we are talking about now. There are going to be many groups here. So let's see how they form. Anyways, power, the first coordinate, this can further be divided into three types: coercive power, utilitarian power, normative power. Then legitimacy we may relate to the processes, responsibilities, roles, and social legitimacy. Actually, these two are two different things. The roles, responsibilities, and processes. This is procedural. These are the legitimate, approved procedures. But when we come over to social legitimacy, the thing completely changes. In social legitimacy, it does not matter what the process, roles, or responsibilities were. You can completely disregard all the rules and policies and procedures and responsibilities. Social legitimacy covers the way in which a certain behavior is accepted. That is actually new culture formulation. Cultures in organizations are formed this way. A certain type of expectation and requirement in the organization based on the various values, logic, and beliefs. So the previous values, logic, and beliefs which are encompassed in the processes, roles, and responsibilities may not be what the social legitimacy is leading you to. It may lead you to another set of new processes and roles and procedures, but social legitimacy does have its role. So legitimacy is one factor. And the third thing is the urgency. In order to claim to the assigned urgency attribute, Michel, whose research was, the salience model was the research of Michel. Michel considers that it must meet two conditions. That is very interesting. It is not only necessary to be urgent, that generally means the time sensitive for the stakeholder, but to be critical also. I'll just show you his quote exactly. Previously, Romanian, another social scientist, he said, it may be tricky in this context as urgency means to us only time sensitivity. Generally, when we talk about urgency, people think we are talking about time only. But Michel says it is not enough for a stakeholder's claim to be only time sensitive to be considered urgent. So, what is the other factor? That is the criticality. How critical is that? Time sensitive is okay. Yes, it is time sensitive. It will pass. It is just like having a risk, which naturally is time sensitive, but how big the risk is? What is the impact of this risk? So that is exactly we are talking here. So I'll repeat that. It is not only required, not enough to be for a stakeholder to claim to be only time sensitive to be considered urgent, but the other factor is the criticality. As long as the manager does not perceive that the stakeholder considers it important, he will not classify it as urgent. That is the point. So this criticality or this urgency is coming not from the manager, program manager side. This is coming from the stakeholder side. So if stakeholder considers it important and critical, then I will call it urgent. Otherwise, if there is something which has to happen on a certain point in time, but none of my stakeholders is worried about it, then I will not assign it the urgency. Low urgency will be assigned to that. High urgency cannot be assigned to that. Okay, just look at it. I don't know if you can see the animation. I have tried to build the three-dimensional model, and in this three-dimensional model, we are still binded by the 0 to 10. Just look at the previous diagram we have had. Yeah, you see in these diagrams which we discussed earlier. Okay, in these diagrams, say power and interest, we had this side representing low, 0. You want to do it low to high, you want to do it 0 to 10, you want to do it 0 to 100, whatever scale you want. You can use two scales simultaneously. So considering low and high, I have the lighter side first and the heavier side later, higher level values later. So if I take the same methodology and I build it into a three-dimensional model, then I will have, as I said, these 8 cubes, right? These 8 cubes. Now, just look at it. This is the origination point, 0. This is the origination point. On power, this is low and this is the highest point. On legitimacy, again, this is low or 0 and this is the highest point. And on urgency, again, starting from the base, this is the low and this is the highest point. I hope you can see what I'm indicating. Are my indications visible to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just look at it. I am going to place a Venn diagram in front of you, and I will translate everything from on the same diagram, three-dimensional model I just created, and I'll first explain this. Power, legitimacy, and urgency interact or overlap with each other. Okay, if somebody has power and does not have legitimacy or urgency, then probably that stakeholder is lying in this region which is not overlapping with anything. So such a stakeholder would be called, now a new kind of classification is coming up. This kind of stakeholder who exercises the power but no legitimacy and no urgency is called a dormant stakeholder. Now let's talk about the legitimacy. If a stakeholder does have a legitimacy but doesn't have any power or urgency, this is called a discretionary stakeholder. So I am defining a new description, a new definition for the grouping from salience model. Another stakeholder who has urgency but no power and no legitimacy, then this is called a demanding stakeholder. Now let's talk about a person, a stakeholder with power and legitimacy and no urgency. This is a dominant stakeholder. Then stakeholder with power and urgency but no legitimacy. This is a dangerous stakeholder. Then we have another stakeholder with urgency and legitimacy but no power. This is a dependent stakeholder. And if some stakeholder is high on all these 3 points, power, legitimacy, and urgency, that is a definitive or core stakeholder. And anyone who doesn't have any one of these things is not a stakeholder. So we have defined
So
8 different
when you
classes.
say discretionary, is it discretionary on the part of the program manager or it's a discretionary exercising stakeholder?
From the program manager's point of view, if there is a legitimacy with the stakeholder but he doesn't have any power or urgency, if program manager can accommodate, he may. So it is on part of the program manager.
So he will consider him, he will choose him or not choose him as per his own discretion. It's not the discretion of the stakeholder.
Exactly. It's not
That he will exercise his legitimacy or his power or not. Because all he's lacking is urgency. When he feels it's urgent, he will exercise his right to be demanding. If not, I thought it was discretionary on the part of the stakeholder.
okay. But you see, if our stakeholder doesn't have a power or urgency, and he just have maybe the ethical values or something like that, so it is upon the program manager whether he can accommodate him or not. If he can, he sure will. But if he can't, then he is not doing anything wrong. So this is why I'm calling it discretionary.
Okay, because I thought all the other descriptions, it means that the program manager is looking at classifying them and
Hmm.
he's thinking, just like if you look at the base of urgency,
Hmm.
then you see that he's calling them demanding, that they will demand
Yes.
from him.
So out of these 8 classes, uh, who what is most important? Naturally, definitive. Definitive is
Definitive.
gets the first priority. Then probably dominant, dependent, and dangerous. No, in that sequence. Definitive, dominant, dependent, dangerous. If I have to allocate resources, I'll allocate it according to these. So discretionary is far off from me. Discretionary is probably the second last. So therefore, if
Yeah.
only I have resources left, and probably I can, on my discretion, choose that. And demanding is even lower than that. He is just demanding. I am not supposed to be fulfilling his requirement. I hope you understand. Demanding is lower than discretionary.
Demanding, I thought the lowest is dormant, and then it's discretionary, and
I'll
then
just show you
demanding.
on 3 dimensions, and you will see where everyone is placed, and you will be able to judge it yourself. But my last point, the last stakeholder, anyone who has no power, no legitimacy, no urgency is not a stakeholder. And by the way,
Yeah.
anyone having low power, low legitimacy, or low urgency also tends to be, I don't want to call him a non-stakeholder, but he tends to be dragged towards a non-stakeholder. He will not be given any attention at all. Okay, let us see all these on the 3 dimension.
Hey, Suhail,
Yes, please.
can you explain a little more about legitimacy in other words?
We have explained it in 2 ways. Number one is the authorized, legitimate procedures, principles, roles, and responsibilities. It is your book of standards, or whatever you want to call it, processes and procedures. So the legitimate way of working, that is one legitimacy. And the second legitimacy is the social legitimacy, which sometimes supersedes the formal legitimacy. So when I say somebody does not have power, power is the biggest element. Somebody does not have power, so he can't exercise it. But officially, or legally, or socially, or ethically, for that matter, he may require certain conditions to be met. But because he doesn't have power and there is no urgency, then legitimacy, we will keep it, we will try to fulfill his requirement if we have resources. Otherwise, this can be, we may not ignore it. may ignore it. But legitimacy combined with power or urgency, it changes the whole status. When legitimacy and power comes together, that makes it a dominant requirement. This is a dominant stakeholder there. When the legitimacy and urgency work together, it becomes a dependent stakeholder. But this is just in the same order. Definitive is number one, dormant, discretionary, definitive, dominant, dependent, dangerous, and then dormant, discretionary, and demanding. Okay, let us look at it from another view. My computer has actually frozen. Let me see what is the problem here. Okay. Just give me a moment. I don't know what has gone wrong with it. So it seems my mouse is not working. Anyways, we can still try to make some use out of it. Okay. So let us look at, as I was explaining, the different types of stakeholders. Basic, categories of stakeholders here, according to this Venn diagram or salience model, we have got definitive stakeholders. That is the core. That is the most important. Then we have got expectant stakeholders, which include all those who have the overlap of two areas, and latent stakeholders where we have overlap with one area. I mean, no overlap. So let us see. The definitive is the core, where all three cross each other. Expectant stakeholders are those having two of the three attributes. So power and urgency, or power and the other thing. So that could be an expectant stakeholder, and latent stakeholder is one which does not have any overlap. And no stakeholder means it doesn't have any one of these characteristics, any one of these three. Okay. So just look at this diagram. This I have tried to show you the definitive stakeholder. I hope you will be able to understand it. This definitive stakeholder is the red box, red cube. High power, I just can't show you from the mouse because I can't indicate it, but you can clearly see the cube, the red cube. This red cube is on the highest point from the power point of view, from the legitimacy point of view, as well as from the urgency point of view. This is the peak box. So this box is definitive. Any stakeholder falling in this category is definite. Let us see what are the expectant stakeholders. These are the three expectant stakeholders: yellow, green, and blue. Yellow is what? High on power and high on legitimacy. High on power and high on legitimacy, but low on urgency. This is one expectant stakeholder which is called dormant. Then we have another expectant stakeholder with high legitimacy and high urgency, but no power. This is called dependent stakeholder. And the dangerous stakeholder is another expectant stakeholder, and this is high power and high urgency, but no legitimacy. So why is it dangerous? Because he has the power to dictate his urgency. he has a power to dictate his urgency. So even if he does not have much of legitimacy or no legitimacy at all, he may push through his agenda. So this stakeholder is extremely dangerous. So this classification is called expectant stakeholders, where we overlap two of the three variables: dormant, dependent, and dangerous. Looking at them one by one, yellow is the dormant, as I explained, high power and high legitimacy. Then green cube is dangerous, this is high power and high urgency. And blue cube is the dependent stakeholder with high legitimacy and high urgency. And if I put them all together, these are the four cubes which are high on any one of these items. So the high points all are covered by these four cubes.
So Suhail, when you say dependent, it says low power, high legitimacy, high urgency. But what does it mean by dependent? What do you mean? What are they? Can you depend on them, or they are depending on something else?
They are depending on something. They do not have power. They do,
So,
the person
so
who is forcing us to do something is dangerous. That is dangerous. High power. This guy doesn't have any power, but he has ethical values and other values, and he expects that he will be catered for, and he is showing high level of urgency also. But because he doesn't have much power, so he is dependent on the stakeholder, on the program manager to entertain him. But he will not be entertained until and unless we have catered other important stakeholders. So this is not the highest priority one. Highest priority one is the core. Okay, let's move on.
all together other stakeholders support, then he will become more powerful.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to the latent stakeholders. Naturally, latent stakeholders are those which do not overlap with anyone else. So latent stakeholders, dormant, they are perceived as having power, but no legitimacy, no urgency, as I said earlier. Discretionary, they are perceived with legitimacy, but no power and no urgency. Demanding, as we said, no power and no legitimacy. So these are the three cubes. I have shown them in lighter colors. These are the three cubes which are latent stakeholders. And within the latent stakeholders, the one with high power, only high power, is called dormant. The one with only high legitimacy is called discretionary, and one only with high urgency is called demanding. And if I put them all together, we have how many? 3, 3, 6, and 1, 7. All of these stakeholders put together will become this. The whole cube is filled. And anyone who is not within this cube is a non-stakeholder. I hope I have made this point clear.
Yeah.
Okay, we can show the exactly same story which we have shown through the Venn diagram and the three-dimensional modeling, and that is I have discussed with you earlier, that could be shown through a bubble chart. We can show 3 dimensions on 2-dimensional page. How? The third dimension we can put as a size of the stakeholder. So what I have done is I have taken the same model of having the power on the y-axis and legitimacy on the x-axis, but on the z-axis, which is the size of the bubble, shows the urgency. So this is more popular because people easily can understand it. Now let us plot all of those stakeholders which we have just studied. How are they placed? So you can see the biggest bubble on the quadrant 2, that is the top right quadrant. This biggest bubble is the one which is due to the highest urgency, and this quadrant itself shows highest power and highest legitimacy. So everything high, definitive. This is definitive are the core stakeholder. This group, this specific group of stakeholders would be called definitive. Definitive. If only high power and high legitimacy was there, but urgency was not there, then it was this small bubble on top of the definitive, that is the dominant one. We are talking about a dominant stakeholder who has high power, high legitimacy, but low urgency. Let's go to quadrant 1. The biggest bubble there shows this stakeholder has high urgency, high power, but low legitimacy. So this is dangerous. And if just look at it at the neighbor, green one is dormant, and dormant means high power, low legitimacy, and low urgency. In the third quadrant, dependent. This dependent is high urgency, high legitimacy, low power. So this bubble is big, and this is in this third quadrant. And discretionary is high on legitimacy, low on urgency, and low on power. High on power. Low on power, high on legitimacy, and low on urgency. In quadrant 4, we have demanding. Demanding is low on the power and legitimacy and only high on urgency. This is the demanding stakeholder. And anyone who is low on everything, power, legitimacy, and urgency, this is a non-stakeholder. I hope by these 3 different ways, I was able to explain the salience model to you. So, classically speaking, from all the books I have consulted, I could find only this much. It does not talk about any more than three variables. But I personally believe, and this could be a topic for further research, what if there are 4 or more than 4 variables? How would you measure them? Then I would rather go for weighted average method, or I would create a formula to measure those, because not exactly for stakeholders, but we have been doing that for contracting. So a weighted average kind of a system can be created, and we can have some solution to that. Okay, any questions so far?
No. Good.
Okay, I hope this point was clarified. Let me get back to my presentation. Okay, we left off our last lecture at this point. We were talking about program governance practices, and we had covered a couple of governance practices already. We were at 6.1.6. We had talked about the program governance plan. We have talked about the program governance vision and goal. We have talked about the program approval, endorsement, and definition, program success criteria, program monitoring, reporting, and controlling. And now we are going to start from program risk issue governance. And then further on, subsequently, we will have program quality governance, program change governance, program governance reviews, program periodic health checks, program component initiation and transition, and program closure. So let us move on. This was just the introduction to lead you to the current topic. 6.1.6, program risk and issue governance. As you have already seen, risks we have been dealing with even in project management and now in program management also. But remember PMBOK 6th edition, 6th edition, yes, that has given a new angle to the risks, and that is the risks can be escalated. Previously, the strategies we had, the positive and negative strategies, escalation was not a part of it. I have already discussed it too. So now the 5th strategy is escalation of the risk. So we already have been in habit of understanding about escalation that this is related to issues or problems. So both ways, if a risk is something which has not happened, and issue is something which has happened, right? So if a risk happens, it doesn't remain a risk, it becomes an issue or a problem. So whatever the case is, whether it is still a risk or it has become an issue or a problem, in any case, whenever we know about it, we can escalate it to the next higher level, because the escalation path must have been defined. Organizations normally define the escalation path. So as far as the program is concerned, risk and issue management is very critical. And if you want to be effective in your risk and issue management practices, ensure that key risks and issues are escalated appropriately and resolved in a timely manner. Remember, if something is escalated to you, why? Why is it being escalated to you? Because it could not have been resolved by the lower level management. And you are next in path. And if you put it into the pending tray and do not resolve this escalation, risk or issue or problem or whatever, if you do not resolve it, this is going to biodegrade it. It will be more dangerous. It will keep becoming more dangerous if you do not treat it immediately. So timely manner is the key here. You should resolve all the risks and issues coming to your table immediately. The escalation process typically operates at two levels. One is within the program and other is outside of the program. Because we are not concerned about the project, if could not resolve it, is already escalated it to me, the program manager. So within the program, it is between the component teams, the program management team and the program steering committee, all the escalation path existing within them is what is within the program. And if even the program steering committee, which is the highest level within the program, could not resolve it, then it will be escalated outside of the program. That is between the program management team, the program steering committee, and other stakeholders, higher level or whatever stakeholder. So this is the whole wide world. So escalation process must be clearly defined in program for both ways. Within the program, how the problems and issues and risks are to be escalated and resolved, and if not resolved, how and when they should be escalated outside of the program. This is the risk and issue governance. The expectations for risk and issue escalation at all levels are documented and communicated to ensure that organization clearly defines its requirements for the engagement of governing stakeholders at the appropriate times for effective risk and issue management. Now, I don't know if you understand this point, but this is really very important. A problem is lying on your table and you are not available. And it's not only you, but maybe the action is in hand of some governing stakeholder, and that stakeholder is not available. I had a problem dealing with one such assignment where there was a high-powered committee which had to make decisions, and that was so high-powered committee that it used to sit only once in 3 months. So all the problems we had to wait for 3 months. This is no way of having escalation. If the escalation has to be heard only after 3 months, there has to be an accelerated process. There has to be an emergency process. The problems can't wait for 3 months. So governing stakeholders must be made available. And for that, there must be some mechanism for arranging and organizing the meeting of those governing stakeholders who will have to deal with that escalation. And naturally, this is also dependent on the risk appetite of the organization, and working with organizational governance and the program management team, program governance may establish program risk thresholds for adherence within the program. So we are now not talking only about the project. The risk appetite of program might be much larger than what the program, what the appetite of a project, risk appetite of a project is, or of an individual stakeholder in a project is. Now we are talking about a bigger thing, program. So program stakeholders and organizational risk appetite, that is the subject now, and we have to look at it from that angle. I'm not going into detail of each one of them because the next two chapters, 7 and 8, they will cover the program activities. So there we will have chance to talk a bit more on these topics. This is just, I'm just showing you the basic working of each governance level. If you talk about the quality governance, what do you say about quality? Naturally, quality is generally inherited from the organization. As governance is, so your organization may be a ISO certified organization. You might have a quality policy. So whatever is the organizational quality governance framework, that is being translated into the portfolio and then now the program quality governance. The governance of quality is essential to the success of the program. And even if there is no quality governance available at organizational level, program level, you are at a program level, you are responsible to establish a quality governance mechanism. Maybe your organization is not a quality organization, but your program has to be a quality program. Therefore, you have to develop some governance mechanism for your program, at least. I'm only saying if that organizational quality governance is not existing. If it is existing, then naturally we are going to create a subset of that. So the governance of quality is essential to the success of the program. Naturally, quality management planning is often performed at the component level and is therefore governed at that level. And what is the component level? Projects, sub-programs, and program activities. So quality is to deal with that. So whatever is the quality of the program and components and all that, that is going to be, cumulated at the program level. And you must have a proper check and balance system only defined in the program level, which will ensure that all the qualities are being consolidated properly. The governance participants are responsible for reviewing and improving the approach to quality management and the standards of which quality will be measured. So, how the quality is being measured, what approaches are being used, naturally, this is part of the governance, and you are just ensuring by reviewing and approving whatever is coming from the component according to that quality standard. In some cases, governance participants may define such measures which include minimum quality criteria and standards to be applied to all components of the program. Naturally, whatever is the program quality governance would be ultimately translated into the component governance. So the portion of quality governance from the program will also be inherited to the project governance or the component governance, and that's how, if you do have a quality governance at program level, that will be translated down to the project or other components. So that would define the minimum quality criteria established by the program. Minimum requirements for quality planning, quality control, and quality assurance by components. This is to be defined by the component in their governance plan. Any required program level quality assurance or quality control activities which are, on the consolidated benefit or the consolidated working of the components, that has to be dealt directly by the program, that will be done by the program level. So for that, roles and responsibilities for required program level quality assurance and quality control activities, this will only be defined. You are not supposed, as I said many times earlier, you are not supposed to micromanage the projects or your components. Let them do their job. Let them do their quality audit, quality assurance, and quality control. But whatever is coming to you from those components, you are supposed to be doing the quality control or assurance at that level, and that would be the consolidation level. Quality control activities may differ at the component level naturally based on the complexity and uncertainty. It is not only the complexity and uncertainty, we actually are dealing with more detail in a component or a project. Here, we are not dealing with that detail. We are just at program level, we are dealing with the result produced by the component. Because if I have two things coming from two projects, I am trying to join them. This is the program level quality governance, how these things are to be joined. The quality of those two products put together. So we will ensure that whatever is being received from each project is according to proper quality assurance and control standards. So naturally in section 8, where we will talk about the program activities, this will be discussed further. Program change governance. Program governance plays a critical role in the authorization of changes to the program. And if you remember, I have already had a discussion with you about organizational change management, and you already know from your PMP experience project change request. Here we also have a program change control mechanism. So what change are we talking about? Naturally, we do understand the organizational change management at the organizational level has actually given birth to all portfolios, programs, and projects. But within the program, I develop a program management plan, and if something doesn't go according to my baselines, I am supposed to bring through progressive elaboration changes in that, just like I used to do in the project management. So program governance plays a critical role in the authorization of changes to the program. So if something is to be changed, and interestingly, we do understand also that programs are more uncertain, more critical, but more uncertain. Therefore, there is a tendency of having more changes. But at the same time, there's a good thing about programs that they are not as detailed as projects or components. So opportunity of detailed changes are not there. But naturally, the structure of the program may change. Like the roadmap may change, like your timelines may change and things like that. Program steering committee is responsible for defining the types of changes that a program manager would be independently authorized to approve, and those changes that would be significant enough to require further discussion prior to approval. Now, just think about it. Which are the changes which the program manager is independently authorized to make? Such changes would deal with, all the project managers are, sending their project change request to the program manager because program manager is their sponsor. So program manager is authorized independently to approve or reject their change requests, right? Because whatever the project level control board is concerned, project board or change control board, program manager is involved with that. So that level of changes, he can deal directly. But if there is some change which is affecting the overall program, probably such like change will have to go to the steering committee. As a result of monitoring, reporting, and controlling practices, the governance participants should be well positioned to assess the proposed changes to the program, plan, approach, or activity. Now, at this stage, what the program manager is doing, program manager is now creating the change request. He's not approving. He is only approving those change requests which are coming from the component. Now he thinks that there is something to be changed in the whole program, and if the baseline is the performance baseline of the program is to be changed, it has to be done by the program steering committee. So now program manager is requesting the change. As a result of his monitoring, reporting, and controlling all those practices, as a result of that, he will be suggesting changes, and those changes will be debated in the program steering committee, and they are the authority to approve or reject. So, program manager assesses whether the risks associated with potential changes are acceptable or desirable. This is what he is doing. He is finding a reason to create a change request. So he has to justify it. Whether the risks associated with a potential change are acceptable or desirable, whether the proposed changes are operationally feasible and organizationally supportable, and whether the changes are significant enough to require approval of the program steering committee. If it is at a low level, it is within his power. It is about just putting one and one together from different projects, then probably he has the authority to deal with such type changes. But if it is affecting the program structure, then steering committee will have to get involved. And program manager is responsible for ensuring all these points before he can put up his recommendations to the program governance program board. Program manager then recommends changes that require approval by the program governance participant through the program steering committee. Who are the governance participants? Naturally, they are the key stakeholders. And sometimes they are also part of the steering committee. Well, we are not debating, talking about the constituents of the steering committee. That could be a little debatable because who can be included, who cannot be included. That PMI generally that does not discuss that much detail. But if you go to UK, and in UK we have got APMG standard. In APMG standard, which are the government standards for that, they have got details of every committee, how many people should be there in a specific steering committee, and who exactly they should be. So because PMI is just a structure, they do not recommend any formats or any such recommendation. So it just says program governance participants. The extent to which a change can be authorized by program governance is bounded by the program business case and organizational strategy. That is the capping thing. Business case and organizational strategy, that what defines the program, and therefore all the changes within that scope are the area of the program. The record of proposed changes, its rationale, and its outcome is maintained by the program team. So the record will be kept. If there is a program management office, probably that will keep a record of that, and so on.
So Suhail, is program governance committee not the program governance?
Which yeah, okay, through the program steering committee. Well, you see, that's exactly why I was saying that this is different in many organizations. In some organizations, you will have a governance board and a steering committee. In some organizations, you will have only one body. Maybe the governance board is the steering committee. Maybe the steering committee is governing everything. So, kind of, this depends upon your organization, whether you have a governance board, steering committee, or both. But governance board will usually
steering
have
committee is not. Does the steering committee report to anybody?
Yes, of course. If both are existing, then steering committee is reporting to the governance board. And sometimes we call this steering committee as change control board. You might have heard about it, change control board. The program change control board, you can name it. Or any other,
We have a control board, but only for projects. When it comes to steering committees, they're only if it's a city or a government level thing, then they report to the basic provincial government. But if you have a city level governance committee or a steering committee, it does not report to anybody else.
Okay. What I am trying to say is, this is the fabrication of wherever you are working. If you are working at a government level, the dynamics would be according to how government manages the thing and the governance levels. There will not be just one governance. There will be a governance levels above you, many governance levels, maybe provincial, district, provincial, and federal, and I don't know what. So how do they manage it? That it depends upon how that organization is performing. If you are talking about a mid-size organization, probably they won't require a steering committee if they have a governance board already within the organization. We are not talking about government. We are talking about a mid-size organization. The governance board for the program may be the change control board, maybe the steering committee itself. And if the size is large, then probably you may need to bifurcate between various responsibilities and various boards and committees. Okay. The extent to which a change can be authorized by governance, program governance, is bounded by the program business case and organizational strategy, as I already said. And naturally, further details about change governance activities will be covered in chapter 8 to section 8.2.1. Coming on to 6.1.9, program governance reviews. Program governance endorses reviews of programs at key decision points in the program lifecycle. Now, I think UK's system is much more well organized than what is explained in this program management standard, because they have got these reviews clearly defined. So they have got, they call them gateways. So they have gateway 0, gateway 1, gateway 2. So on every gateway, there are certain reviews to be carried out. And for that, they have certified consultants who can be authorized to do those reviews. So they are third party and they can conveniently do that. But if at program governance level, you are supposed to be doing the review of your program, naturally, I would say you do it according to the program life cycle. Wherever one phase has finished, that is the point where you can create a gate, and at that point you can have certain reviews. For example, when the planning is completed, you can check the planning documents. So that review may include all those things. So this could be further explained. But these are the key decision points where you get the go, no go decision, whether you are allowed to move ahead in the program lifecycle or you are not. These reviews often are conducted at times that coincide with the initiation or completion of significant segments of a program to enable governance to approve or disapprove the passage of a program from one significant segment to another. And we clearly understand program life cycle, we have got clearly three phases. So although those phases can be subdivided, and that is already shown to you in the diagram, but when you have done doing your implementation, naturally you are moving on to the closing and transition phase. And when you are in closure, then probably all the implementation must be reviewed as if they are complete. Only then you should be allowed, a go decision can be given to move on to the last phase of the program lifecycle. They also facilitate the review and approval of any required changes to the program at key decision points. The same point. Key decision points occur at the end of program phase. Every phase, when it ends, that is a gateway. That is the point, key decision point, where the reviews must have been carried on, where the approvals must be given. Phase gate reviews are reviews at the end of a phase in which a decision is made to continue to the next phase, or to continue with modification, or to end a program or program component. Although it looks like a very similar definition as it was in project, but here it is more applicable. The phases in project are very different. I have explained it to you earlier. The phases in project are created according to the work of the project, and every project may be different. For construction, there could be different phases. For software development, there could be different phases. But because program is more holistic in nature, program has got standardized phases. So they are, you can't say that this program has got different phases than another program. The program generally will go through the same major phases. So those phases are predefined phase gateways as far as the program management is concerned. So they are predefined phase gateways, and reviews can be designed around them. This I'm saying from managing successful programs in UK, that is a certification MSP, and program management professionals, they are equivalent to each other. But naturally, that is more detailed in nature, because that is not only our standard, that is more of working of the government of UK. Okay, these enable governance to approve or disapprove the passage of a program from one significant phase to another. So we need to have permission to move ahead, go no go decision. So this approval or disapproval, whatever it is given by the governance board at these conducting these governance reviews. Program governance endorses decision point reviews and their specific objectives, which may include assessment of the strategic alignment of the program and its components with the intended goals of both program and the organization, and the outcomes of the program component activities to assess the actual versus planned realization of program benefit. Now we are here not talking about the product, service, or result. We are not, comparing the product, service, or result with what was planned and what is actual. Here we are talking about the benefits, realized benefits. We are assessing the actual versus planned realization of program benefits and the potential need to adopt the program plan in response to such outcomes. So look at both the dimensions. Program stays aligned with the program and organizational goals and objectives, and the outcomes are also realizing the benefits as they were supposed to. If they are not, then you may move a change request. Risk that the program faces, to ensure that the level of risk remains acceptable and to provide opportunity for program governance to assist in responding to risk. Program resource needs and organizational commitments in addition to capability for fulfilling them, and stakeholder satisfaction with current program performance. All of these things are contributing towards the program governance. You have to have an eye on the risk. You have to look at the program resources, their needs and commitment, stakeholder satisfaction, and potential impact of external environment developments on program strategies and plans. So environmental factors are there, stakeholder is there, resources are there, risks are there. So these are to be looked at in addition to your reviews, and rather I would say these things are part of your review. Your reviews must include the management of the risk, resources, stakeholders, and environment. These all must be closely looked at. More things are program compliance with the organizational quality and process standards, information critical to the strategic prioritization. This is coming from the portfolio, our operational investment of the organization as part of its portfolio management activity. This specific review will provide information to the portfolio management. Issues that should be resolved in order to improve program progress. This is a monitoring issue. Potential need for changes to elements of program in order to further improve the program performance and likelihood of success. This is again change management and change control. Fulfillment of criteria for exiting the preceding phase and entering the succeeding phase. So that is the success criteria of one phase and entering into the next phase. This is the permission. And other reviews could also be there, which may be held to support the decision-making needs of the organization. For example, program reviews held in support of portfolio management or budgeting processes, as we just indicated one of the portfolio decisions. So all of these reviews are basically not only allowing us to move ahead, from the point where we are stuck, but at the same time, they are ensuring that portfolio needs are satisfied, organizational needs are satisfied, program needs are satisfied. If everything is right, then we move ahead. Otherwise, we may resort to a change request. So this is about the program governance reviews. Through the conduct of these reviews, Program Steering Committee has the opportunity to confirm its support for continuation of the program as defined, or to initiate recommendation for adaptive changes to the program strategy, improving the program's ability to pursue and deliver its intended benefits. Now, I understand we said that portfolio does have power to close down a project at any time. But closing down a project as compared to closing down a project is quite different. Program is a huge entity. You think twice before closing it down. You resort to other, possibilities. How can you still make it work? And if it was a project, then you might have taken the decisions immediately. So here, program governance reviews will also assist in accumulating data on how to improve the program, why it should not be closed, and then these recommendations may go to portfolio. Okay. Then comes 6.1.10, that is program periodic health checks. Health checks are also kind of reviews, but as you understand, reviews are done at certain accomplishment point. When a phase has finished, there we do the reviews. But health checks are sudden and they can be carried out anytime. And as I explained earlier, this is kind of a mechanism in which you check the patient at any time and any point in time. So the program can be checked for these health checks at any point. We can freeze the project and we can take an X-ray of the project and see where we are. Although it includes the same kind of reviews in it, but this is at any single point in the life of the program. This could be done at any time. Although they can be done at any time, but I would still say they could be scheduled and they could be sudden. Even health checks can be scheduled. Program periodic health checks, generally held between decision point reviews, assess a program's ongoing performance and progress towards the realization and sustainment of benefits. So they will provide us the interim data. Reviews will review the finish of something. But between two review points, we can have as many health checks as we want. And more health checks would naturally have some, overload on the program, but still you have to balance it. How many health checks do you want and what is to be checked? The importance and use of these reviews, the health checks, increase when there is an extended period between scheduled decision point reviews. Say there is one decision point and the other decision point, both are a year apart. So don't we need to see in between how the program is performing? Therefore, we need to put in certain decision points and those would be the health checks. The program governance plan specifies governance requirements for scheduling, the content, who are going to be the participants, and assessment metrics to be used during such health checks. So one thing I have clarified, health check is a kind of a review. Number two, these reviews are done between those major reviews which we call the governance reviews. And this is kind of a X-ray taken at any point in time. It could be scheduled and it could be sudden. Program component initiation and transition. Program Steering Committee Approval is usually required prior to the initiation of individual components of the program. To the extent that initiation of a component requires the introduction of additional governance structures that are responsible for monitoring and managing the component. Now, this is a very heavy statement, number one. Program is already running, but all the components, when they will be started and when they will be finished, steering committee is going to be involved in. Program steering committee is going to be involved in the decision of initiating any project or component within the program and on closing also. That is number one thing. Once we do that, we may need to provide a subset of the program governance at that point in time to that project. That would become the project or the component governance structure. So the program governance structure we had, and now we are starting a component or a project. So I will provide the governance structure for that project or the component as a guideline that are responsible for monitoring and managing those components. These are the people who create it. So program steering committee or program manager is responsible to create that governance structure and give it to those components. And the second requirement is the firm commitment of the organizational resources for its completion. That is why the charter is developed. Firm commitment, a proper charter has been issued. So a firm commitment by the organization resources. So two things you have to provide to start any project within the program or a component within the program. One is a governance structure and the other is a chart. The program manager frequently acts as the proposer when seeking authorization for the initiation of these components. So before this permission can be sought, who prepares the case for each component or the project to be initiated? Program manager is the one. The approval of the initiation of a new program component generally includes these many things. Number one, developing, modifying, and reconfirming the business case. This is not the business case of the program. This is the business case of that component, of that project. Number two, ensuring the availability of resources, because these resources are to be provided by the program to the project. So program will ensure availability of resources to perform that component. Defining or reconfirming individual accountabilities for management and pursuit of the component. That is naturally assigning the project managers or component managers and assigning them various accountabilities and responsibilities. Ensuring the communication of critical component related information to key stakeholders. Now this is important because when we are starting a project, we are opening a new Pandora box that will have its own component stakeholders. Project manager will have his own stakeholders for his project. But how those communications have to be linked with program stakeholders. Not all the program stakeholders, but relevant program stakeholders. So ensuring that communication of critical component related information to key stakeholders at program level. Ensuring the establishment of component specific program level quality control plans when required. Now, just look at the component as a job being assigned to someone. How are you as a program manager check the quality of that job? That is the program level quality control. So you will create your own plans for that and let the project manager do his own job. He will create his own quality control, quality management plan and everything. That is the project manager's business. But your business is that program level quality control of each component. How are you going to do it? So you will have your own metrics. Project manager will define his own metrics. Authorizing the governance structure to track the component's progress against its goals. How are we going to report whether a component is progressing well or not. So that governance structure which we have provided to the project or the component, that actually describes how and when they have to report upstairs to the program. The approach used in managing activities within the component is generally dependent on the specific nature of the component. Naturally, it will differ from component to component. For example, component projects should be managed according to the principles of the practices of project management. So the rules are, for that matter, the standard applied to the component is PMBOK. Standard applied to the program you are running and the program activities you are conducting is the program management standard. So there are two different standards. So all the PMBOK standard will apply to the components or the projects, while other programs should be managed according to, other program mean the component programs. If the component is a program, that program subprogram will again be guided by the program management standard. Should be managed according to the principles defined and described in this standard. Components could be subprograms or projects. If project, governed by PMBOK. If subprogram, governed by the program management standard. Upon initiation of a new component, all program level documentation and record dealing with that component should be updated to reflect any changes to the affected components. So naturally, when you are, you had a program management plan and then you created the roadmap and everything that is also existing. If while creating the component, you find and you feel that certain dynamics have changed and it affects your program level documentation, update your program level documentation. If there is a requirement of a change request, move the change request. If it is within your power, then do it yourself. Approval is generally required for transition and closure of individual program components. Again, when the program project or the component is closing, at that point again, the program governance board will get involved. Now that is from the point of view of program governance board will be involved in the initiation and in the closing of all the components. That is one point. Now look at it from another point of view. Just say you are a project within a program. You are a project manager. I am your program manager. As far as initiation and closure is concerned, naturally you are answerable to your sponsor, and program manager is the sponsor. So program manager, for all practical purposes, he is giving you the initiation. He is allowing you to initiate or to close. And on top of the program manager, program steering committee is looking at it. Program manager seeks permission from the program steering committee for starting any component or closing any component. And with running a component, project manager will create a life cycle and define that life cycle to the program manager and get it approved. And after every phase of the project, the program manager, which is the project sponsor also, will actually be approving each phase and giving him go or no go decision. This is not the responsibility of program governor. The project phases approval is not the responsibility of program governor, but of the program manager alone. Because project manager will be, or component manager will be answering to the program manager. I hope I have not confused you any further. Is this point clear?
Yes, I think that you're saying that the components or like the project managers will get approvals of their phases from program manager, and then the program manager will get approval of the components from the program steering committee.
Exactly, but only 2 points: initiation and closing. Only 2 points.
Yeah.
Within each phase of the project, uh, governance board will not be bothered.
Yeah.
Program manager will deal with it. But only when initiating or closing a component, that is the point when he will seek permission from program governance board.
Yeah. So initiation, transition, and closure.
Exactly. So the review of any recommendation, program component is continued. The review of any recommendation for the transition or closure of program component generally includes confirming that the business case for the component, we are talking about the project, the component has been sufficiently satisfied, or that further pursuit of the component's goal should be discontinued. Ensuring appropriate program level communication of the component's closure to key stakeholders. Actually, these are the same points which we use to start the component. We created a business case. We said we will define who are the stakeholders who will be informed, program stakeholders who will be informed about the component working or the output of the component. So this is what we are ensuring here now. Ensuring component compliance with the program level quality control plans when required. Assessing organizational or program level lessons learned as a consequence of performance of the component in transition. So all the lessons learned or the knowledge base created from the project will come to program, and they may affect the program level lessons learned or may be transferred to the organizational level lesson learned. So this knowledge will be updated at the appropriate level. Confirming that all other accepted practices for project or program transition or closure has been satisfied. This is the last step where the closure has been done. Last practice, governance practice is the program closure itself. Program closure. I'm not talking about the component closure. The last sentence we talked about was the components closure. Now we are talking about the program closure, and you know and understand that that includes two things. One is transition, and the other one is sustainment. The program steering committee reviews and make decisions on recommendations for the closure of the program. It assesses whether conditions warranting the program are satisfied and that recommendations for closure of a program are consistent with the current organizational vision, mission, and strategy. You have to redo it. You started with this point and you have to finish at this point. You have to ensure that organizational vision, mission, and strategy, everything which was program was supposed to do has done it, and we are still in alignment with the vision, mission, and strategy of the organization. Alternatively, programs may be terminated because changes in organizational strategy or environment have resulted in diminished program benefits or needs. That, I said, is a portfolio manager's responsibility. If the need does not exist anymore, the program may be closed down. But I said one more thing, and that was closing down a program abnormally is generally not a principle. It is a very rare happening when it is justified to terminate a program. And that will only be properly justified, that this really cannot be, tuned up, or the benefits cannot be fixed, and ultimately this program must be terminated. But that termination possibility is there with a portfolio. Regardless of the cause for termination, closure procedures should be implemented. So wherever in the life of the program you are, if you are told that the program has to be terminated now, you will start the closure process. You will transit all the benefits so far achieved to, naturally the beneficiaries, and ultimately you will do the sustainment of those benefits. A sustainment plan will be created for that. Practices and processes commonly used to conduct program closure are described in next chapter. We'll talk about it, and we have already talked about some of the benefit realized in section 4.4. At program closure, the importance of effectively transitioning the program governance to operational governance will directly impact the benefits realized. Final program report is approved by the governance participants during closure. So that brings us to the end of the governance practices. Any questions so far?
That's good.
We got another about 67 slides. If you want me to continue now, we have just about 20 minutes. And if you feel that we should do it tomorrow.
How about we do it tomorrow so that we start from a different section?
Okay. Is it all right, Julian?
Yes, please.
So we are breaking off early. So tomorrow is the last day of this week that we will be having this class. I suppose I may become a bit busy in next 2 weeks. I'm not saying no classes. I'll tell you when I'll be busy because I'm shifting my home, and therefore probably I won't be able to conduct classes for 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe I don't have internet for some time or something like that. I will let you know exactly, but be prepared that maybe we have a break for 1 or 2 weeks in this month, but we will be meeting next week. So anyways, we are meeting tomorrow. So take care. Thank you very much for your patience, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, both.